yet, but the former Veep may already be considering his own Veep. According to an Axios report, Team Biden may be considering naming Stacey Abrams as his running mate right out of the gate. Joining me, NBC News political reporter Mike Memoli and Democratic strategist and distinguished lecturer at City University of New York, Basil Smilky. Smichael. Smichael. I get it wrong every freaking time. Mike Memoli, walk us through what we know about Joe Biden's plans.
So, Katie, I reported last summer, as a matter of fact, that Vice President Biden and his team, as they were beginning to sketch out a potential 2020 campaign, were considering ways to address potential liabilities to his candidacy, one of which most obviously is his age. And at the time, yes, they acknowledged they were considering two things. One, announcing that he would run for only one term, and second, that he would start out of the gate by announcing his vice presidential selection at the time he announces his own candidacy. So as we're now in, I think, what is clearly a different phase of the Biden speculation game, he's moved from a decision about whether to run to how to run and the kind of issues and platform he'd run on. You're seeing some of these potential trial balloons, but I do can confirm based on my conversation with the vice president and his team that a possible selection early of a running mate is on the table, but it's just one of a dozen to 20 ideas that they consider to be unconventional ideas that they're considering at this time. And what we can also say is that while he did meet with Stacey Abrams just last week, they had lunch together here in Washington last week, there was no offer of a position on his ticket just yet.
That was going to be my second question. Have they met? Have any other names come up, Mike?
No, I mean, I think that name is floating out there just because of the proximity of their meeting. Biden has spent the last 2 to 3 months, frankly, speaking with lots of Democrats all over the country. Some of his close supporters, others just people he doesn't have a relationship as he wants to build relationships. He obviously also campaigned last year in the midterm elections with some 60 different candidates, so he's been in close touch with a number of those. I think the advice that Biden is considering among those is from Jim Clyburn, who, when I was in South Carolina this week, I made sure to ask. Nobody has South Carolina better wired, at least as far as the Democratic politics, than Jim Clyburn, and him and the vice president are close. He told me he thinks it would be a mistake for Joe Biden or for anybody else who's running at this point to come out of the gate with an early selection of a running mate, that this is something that could be seen as taking your own viability for granted and not giving the voters the chance to vet these candidates themselves.
You know, and South Carolina is one of those states that you have got to win. It's one of those must-win states in order to have the momentum to keep going in the primary. So Jim Clyburn would have a lot of, I imagine, influence there with Joe Biden. Do you think that's the correct advice?
You know what? I do now. At first blush, when I looked at it, and I said, you know what? This is exciting. Stacey Abrams' race in Georgia wasn't just a statewide race. It had national importance, volunteers, and money coming in from all over the country. It was like Beto O'Rourke's. Absolutely. And the fact is that the Democratic base, the African-American voters, are the most loyal and consistent voters for the Democratic Party, particularly African-American women. So this sends an incredible message. But he's still got to win. And I will tell you, there's one thing that I'm concerned about. You know, the comments he made during the Anita Hill hearing will come up. Comments he made about the crime bill will come up. And I don't want to see her being the prop that's out there just defending him.
That was my question. I mean, does this make her look like a prop? Stacey Abrams is a formidable politician in her own right. Are people going to look at this and think, well, hold on, why isn't she given a chance to run herself? Why is she immediately put in the secondary position?
And I've been saying that for a while, because as much as I like Beto, I didn't think that he did anything that was particularly outstanding that was disqualifying for Stacey or for Andrew Gillum to be part of the conversation about running for president of the United States, not VP. But as I said, initially, a lot of people were like, oh, this is great, because Biden is this sort of person that has seemingly shut some money and some staffing decisions down because folks were waiting for him to come into the race. But the more you think about it, the more you say, well, he's still got to win this thing. So it's not a lock for him, and you don't want to put someone like Stacey, whose star is clearly on the rise and has risen to some extent. You don't want to put her in a box either.
What about just the decision to put anybody in that position? You never know, and I'm not saying this about Stacey Abrams in particular, but you just never know what could come out about them in the future. Why would you hamstring yourself this early on?
That's true. I mean, you don't want to. I mean, we are way out of, still a ways away from
It is March 2019.
from anybody going to the polls to make it a decision. decision.
Yeah.
So even if he does this now, or anyone does this now, can you even keep the momentum of that decision going for the rest of this year? Probably not, because there are probably another 5 other candidates that are going to get into this race. So there's no need to box yourself in. It's still about money, quite frankly, and it's still about trying to at least win the day in the media cycle. So he has time, they all have time.
This is happening. Our sales have plateaued.